What's the most utterly bizarre, unexpected, or hilarious thing you've ever witnessed or been a part of? I was working late at a library when a dude in a full medieval knight costume walked in. No sword, thankfully, just chainmail and a helmet. He went straight to the history section, grabbed a massive tome on feudalism, and then, with a dramatic flourish, bowed to the librarian and walked out. Never said a word. My coworker and I just stared at each other for a solid minute before bursting into laughter. Best late shift ever. My first date was at this fancy Italian place. Everything was going great until the waiter brought out the tiramisu. My date, mid-sentence, just scooped the entire dessert onto her lap. Not like she dropped it. She placed it. Then she looked at me, totally deadpan, and said, "Well, that's one way to ruin dessert." We didn't have a second date. My son, age 7, was having a massive meltdown because his Lego spaceship needed more space aliens. We didn't have any more. Frustrated, I told him to make some up. 5 minutes later, he triumphantly presented me with a spaceship crew. Himself, a stuffed dinosaur, and a single defiant potato. He called the potato Commander Spud. Still cracks me up. Spent a weekend exploring an abandoned amusement park. It was spooky but cool. We found the carousel building, mostly intact. While taking photos, the carousel motor grinds to life, playing a distorted, off-key carnival tune. The horses started to slowly rotate. We noped out of there so fast. Turns out, a local teen group was decorating for Halloween and accidentally flipped the switch. Still gives me chills. I was on a crowded subway, reading. Next to me, a guy was meticulously coloring a map of Westeros with crayons. He had a tiny pencil case and everything. At one stop, a woman jostled him, smudging his painstakingly shaded King's Landing. He didn't yell. He just sighed, pulled out a different shade of red, and whispered, Daenerys would be disappointed. I swear I saw his eyebrow twitch. Attending a university lecture on quantum physics. Mid-sentence, the professor stops, points out the window, and says, "Ah, look, a perfect Mandelbrot set in the clouds." He then spent the next 20 minutes enthusiastically explaining fractal geometry using the sky as his whiteboard. We all just went with it. Probably the most beautiful and least understood lecture I've ever attended. I was at a park, eating a sandwich, when a squirrel bolder than I've ever seen approached. It didn't just beg, it stared me down. I offered a tiny piece of crust. It sniffed it, looked back at me, then very deliberately shook its head, as if to say that's not good enough. It then proceeded to climb a nearby tree and taunt me with a nut it had clearly hidden. Rude. Hosting a retro gaming tournament. Everyone's intense, screaming at TVs. Suddenly, the power goes out for the whole block. Silence. Then, from the dark, someone shouts, "Does anyone have a Game Boy in Pokemon Red?" And another voice, "I do. Let's battle." We ended up huddled in the street, illuminated by phone flashlights, trading Pokemon by link cable. Peak 90s nostalgia. My cat, Mittens, usually terrified of everything, somehow got a full-size inflatable T-Rex costume. I came home to find her waddling around the living room, barely fitting through doorways, looking utterly bewildered. She'd somehow knocked over a neighbor's kid's toys and borrowed it. The pure confusion on her face as she tried to jump on the couch, only to be stopped by her own giant inflatable limbs, was the most hilarious thing I've ever seen. I was at a farmer's market, admiring some ridiculously large zucchini. Suddenly, a guy in pristine, albeit slightly too small, banana costume sprints past me, clutching a single, perfect strawberry. He tripped over a misplaced crate of apples, sending strawberries flying everywhere. He scrambled up, popped the strawberry in his mouth, and kept running, leaving a trail of red fruit and bewildered onlookers. The dedication was something. My aunt has this old, ornate mirror she swears is haunted. One night I was house-sitting. I woke up to what sounded like a muffled conversation. Peeking into the hall, I saw the mirror. My own reflection was there, but it wasn't moving. It just stood and watched me. Then, it slowly raised a finger to its lips. I bolted back to bed and didn't sleep a wink. Still not sure what that was. Was stargazing with a telescope in a remote desert. Saw a blinking light. Initially thought UFO. It got closer. Turns out, it was a very enthusiastic guy on a hang glider. Tried to serenade the moon with a ukulele. He was quite off-key. He waved, yelled hello, fellow cosmologists, and then drifted off into the night. Best unintentional celestial concert ever. Working a dull accounting conference. During a coffee break, a flock of pigeons somehow got inside the convention hall. Instead of panicking, everyone just accepted it. People were calmly taking notes, while pigeons perched on their shoulders. One man, mid-presentation, just incorporated the pigeons into his slides, calling them unexpected stakeholders. It was peak corporate absurdity. I was baking late at night, feeling very inspired. Suddenly, a huge moth the size of my hand, landed directly on my rolling pin as I was rolling out dough. It just sat there unfazed. I tried to gently shoo it away, but it clung on. So I just kept rolling dough and moth until I had a perfectly round, albeit slightly fuzzy, piece of dough. I named her Mothy. Exploring an old, forgotten theater. We found a stage, cobwebs everywhere. As we were about to leave, a single spotlight flickered on, illuminating a rusty microphone stand. Then, clear as day, we heard a faint, disembodied voice sing the first line of Bohemian Rhapsody. We froze. The mic stand creaked, and then silence. We noped out of there so fast. Still gives me chills. My kid was obsessed with a particular toy dinosaur. He carried it everywhere. One day, at the grocery store, he was having a monumental tantrum. In a fit of desperate negotiation, I told him the dinosaur needed to buy groceries for its own adventure. He stopped crying, looked at the dinosaur, then at the cashier, and said he wants the green grapes and the sparkly cheese. The cashier just blinked. It worked. Was in a grocery store, just trying to grab some milk. Overheard an elderly woman talking to a rotisserie chicken she had in her cart. She was giving it very specific marital advice, telling it, "Now, don't let him walk all over you, Gertrude. You deserve respect." The chicken, of course, said nothing. She then paused, looked at the chicken intently, and sighed, "Right, good talk. Let's go home and tell Reginald." Had a job interview for a completely mundane accounting position. Everything was normal until the interviewer, a stern-looking man in a beige suit, leaned forward and asked, "What's your favorite type of dinosaur?" I flustered, said T-Rex. He then, without breaking eye contact, asked, "And what do you believe were its primary migratory patterns during the late Cretaceous period?" I just stared. I didn't get the job. On a cross-country road trip, stopped at a tiny gas station in the middle of nowhere. The guy at the pump next to me was meticulously waxing his ancient pickup truck, not with a cloth, but with a bright pink feather duster. He noticed me watching, gave a slow smile, and said, "Keeps the birds confused." Then he winked and went back to feather dusting his tailgate. Worked at a high-end steakhouse. Had a table order a well-done filet, which is already a culinary crime, but then requested a side of unbuttered popcorn. I brought it, thinking it was a joke. He then pulled a tiny, portable popcorn machine out of his bag and started air-popping fresh kernels directly into his plate, scattering them over the steak. Zero explanation given. I was trying to get a good workout in at the gym. A guy on the treadmill next to me was running, in a full three-piece suit, shiny shoes and all. Then his phone rang. He answered it, still running, and proceeded to have a very loud, animated conversation about Q3 projections while simultaneously upping his speed to a full sprint. He finished the call, wiped his brow, and seamlessly transitioned to the elliptical. Was in the ER waiting room after twisting my ankle. A guy walks in, clearly in pain, wearing a full, shining knight's suit of armor, complete with a helmet tucked under his arm. The receptionist asks, "What happened?" He looks her dead in the eye and, in a completely serious tone, states, "A dragon. What else?" And then promptly fainted onto a stack of magazines. My cousin's outdoor wedding was going perfectly. As the officiant got to the "Do you take this woman" part, a flock of about 20 pigeons suddenly descended and landed in a perfect, straight line across the peak of the arbor above the couple's heads. They stayed absolutely still, watching. The moment the couple kissed, they all took flight in unison. Everyone swore it was staged, but it really wasn't. At my very first corporate job, our eccentric CO decided we needed a team building exercise. This involved a mandatory, company-wide competitive hot dog eating contest. The absurdity peaked when the CEO, already drenched in mustard, triumphantly won, then gave a motivational speech about ingesting success while crumbs fell from his beard. It was a bizarre welcome to the professional world. Sitting on a crowded city bus one afternoon, lost in thought. An old man boards, and I notice him discreetly placing something small and leashed onto the empty seat beside him. It was a tiny turtle, no bigger than a teacup, slowly extending its neck. Just then, the bus driver slams the brakes. The turtle slid gracefully off the seat, landing perfectly in the lap of an unsuspecting old woman across the aisle. She didn't even flinch, just calmly looked down and said, "Well, hello there, little fellow." At a dog training class, everyone's pups were mostly well-behaved. My friend's golden retriever, Baxter, usually a sweet goofball. The instructor gave the stay command, and every dog froze, except Baxter. He spotted a squirrel, taunting him from a tree just outside the open screen door. With a primal bark, he launched himself through the door, leash still firmly in my friend's hand. Baxter dragged him across the lawn like a water skier, never breaking eye contact with that squirrel. Pure chaos and pure joy for Baxter. Worked a late shift at a surprisingly quiet university library. Around 1 a.m., I heard this rhythmic, soft thumping from the back of the nonfiction section. Figuring it was a dropped book or maybe a rogue rat, I slowly crept towards the sound. What I found was a student meticulously arranging a towering, perfect pyramid out of every single book about pyramids from the shelves. He finished, surveyed his creation, and then just silently walked out of the library like it was the most normal thing in the world. At our local town fair, they had the classic guess the weight of the giant pumpkin contest. This gruff, weathered farmer clearly won. They brought him up on stage, huge grin on his face, ready for his prize. The announcer dramatically pulls back a sheet to reveal a much smaller, but still pretty big, different pumpkin. The fair organizer piped up. We ran out of space for a truly massive one. The farmer's bewildered expression, slowly morphing into resignation, was absolutely hilarious. Met a guy from an app for coffee. He seemed normal in texts, even charming. We were chatting, everything fine for 10 minutes. Then he reached into his pocket. He pulled out a tiny, intricately carved wooden gnome. Completely straight-faced, he announced it was his emotional support gnome. For the rest of the date, he periodically held it to his ear, seemingly listening before answering my questions. I paid for my latte, made my excuses, and politely ghosted him later. As kids, my brother and I built an epic fort in the woods behind our house, our secret base. One day, we arrived to find an entire garden gnome's tea party set up inside. Tiny teacups, a miniature tablecloth, even a little clay cake. For weeks, we'd add new guests, action figures, smooth rocks, and food, acorns, berries. The next day, everything would be rearranged, sometimes with new items. We never, ever found out who our magical, gnome host and co-conspirator was.